Well, I guarantee that you are going to love my guest today, who will not only inspire you herself, but has a whole tribe behind her of inspirational older women who are smashing it through the menopause and beyond. And I'm talking about the one and only Selene Yeager. She is leading the way for so many of us women who are older and active, and many of her followers are over 50 and 60 and are still professional athletes, hitting records, climbing mountains, and winning races outright over the guys. And personally, I find this group very inspiring. And I first found Selene through the Feisty Menopause Summit through Dr. Stacy Sims. And this summit, which gathered incredible speakers on all topics women going through menopause want to hear, sent me one clear message. And that is menopause is a time to speed up, not slow down. And it also showed me an army of women who just won't sit on the sidelines because society told them game over. They want to keep in the ring, smashing their goals and making even bigger dreams after 50. And boy, did that resonate with me big time. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we still keep up, stay feisty, and be active despite the trials and tribulations of menopause, if that's even a word in your vocabulary? Because frankly speaking, there are plenty of women out there who are bypassing this completely too. So Selene is not only the content creator of the Feisty Menopause group, but she's the host of one of my absolute favorite podcasts, Hit Play, Not Pause. Let me say that one more time for you to make sure you got it. Think menopause, hit play, not pause. I love it. I love that title. And to me, this embodies one of the key aspects of longevity, and that's play. Something we lose when we become adults, because yet it's so important to keep in order to live a long health span and really enjoy life. And who doesn't want to skip the pause button, really? When we hit menopause, life is really just beginning in many aspects. And the way that the population aging is going, you've got another good, say, 30, 40 years ahead of you. So, why would you want to slow down now? But Selene is so much more than all of this. She is a top-selling professional health and fitness writer who is really practicing what she's preaching. And she co-authored the amazing book Roar with Dr. Stacy Sims. And we are now all waiting for their new book to come out. It's called Next Level, Your Guide to Kicking Ass, Feeling Great, and Crushing Goals Through Menopause and Beyond. And I've already got mine on pre-order. I really can't wait for that one to come out. And I'm not done. So hang on, guys. Selene is also an NASM, that's National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer. She's a USA cycling licensed coach, PN1 certified nutrition coach. That's me too. A pro licensed off-road racer and former All-American Ironman triathlete. Need I say more? She's a badass, and she's over 50, and she's going to tell us how she does it. So without further ado, meet Selene Yeager. Welcome.
It's great to be here. That's like quite the intro.
Oh my gosh. It's like it was hard because I had still so much more to put in there.
I was like, I think we covered it. I think it's fine.
No, you are really, really inspirational. And I really want people to value what you have to offer and who you are. It's really important. So I really respect what you do. And you're literally paving the way for women going through menopause and busting stereotypes and all that. And I'd just like to, before we kind of dive into the menopause thing, your whole life story is awesome. And there's a great podcast that you did with Tanya Dalton. So I really encourage everyone else to go there and get into the nitty gritty. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey and into cycling, podcasting, and writing, and how you got to the space of menopause and athletic women?
Sure, I'll give the Cliff Notes abbreviated version of that, because that was a very long podcast. But the simple answer to that is I always rode bikes. Even when all my friends started driving, I was that kid who was like, I wonder if I could ride my bike 20 miles to the lake. And And I did. I would go in my terry cloth shorts and my flip flops, no water, no helmet. My dad would be like, "Would you wear a helmet?" I'm like, "No, my hair." So I'm just like, I don't actually know where any of that came from, but it's somewhere in my DNA. Like I always loved riding. I always loved just like I had that curiosity about like, well, maybe I could hike there. So
Yeah.
but I grew up in a small town and I didn't know people raced bikes. I didn't know that that was something that anybody did. So I didn't ever dream of being competitive that way. I played field hockey and the usual sports. But when I was in my mid-20s, I got a job at Rodale Press. They were the publishers of Bicycling and Runner's World and Men's Health and Women's Health. And it was like I had opened the door to a life that I didn't know I was looking for. But wow, I mean, everybody was super active. And there was this group that rode bikes at lunch. The runners ran and the cyclists rode bikes, and they invited me to join them. So, I had this old bike that I didn't even know there was like good road bikes to be had, but I took my bike out and I started riding, and they were like, "You're kind of good at this. You ever think about racing?" I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Signed up for a race, won. They're like,
Yeah.
"Told you." So I had some innate talent there, and when I was 39, I'd gotten into triathlon because that became big in sort of the late 90s and 2000s. And I signed up for an Ironman as kind of a bucket list thing and trained really hard. And largely based on my bike time, I won my age group, and went to
Wow.
Kona 6 weeks later. So that just took me on this trajectory. I got picked up by a mountain bike racing team, which was amazing. And I spent my 40s not knowing better, not knowing I was too old to be doing this, I guess, like literally racing mountain bikes around the world. I raced in South Africa and Brazil and Israel and Cuba and British Columbia, just like these mountain bike stage races, some of them with Rebecca Rush, who is a very decorated mountain bike racer herself and adventure athlete. So, it was a heady time. It was amazing. And I honestly was not thinking about menopause at all. Like it wasn't even my radar. But I had started experiencing like anxiety, like waking up in panic attacks in the middle of the night and having like drenching night sweats, that I kind of was just attributing like, oh, maybe I'm training really hard. And, I have a daughter and life just gets to you. So I'm just like, I don't know. Because I didn't know anxiety was a symptom. Like I didn't know that, I'd heard about hot flashes, but it wasn't night sweats wasn't really on my radar at that time. So I just kind of kept going, kept doing what I was doing. And around 48, it went like shit went sideways. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but like, sorry, but like things
like went off the cliff. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I had already started the book with Dr. Sims, the Next Level book, and it was
Yeah.
about this time of life. And I got a little panicky. I was like, Stacey, we need to talk. I things are not going well. My body composition seemed to change overnight. Hills that were easy on my bike were not easy. My headspace wasn't good. It just things were just not good. And she's like, calm down, and we dug into like a lot of the things that we're going to cover in the book. But, I started taking some of that advice that we'll talk about through this conversation, I'm sure, and just got like back into a better space, felt more in control. And, after my 50th birthday, I came and I won Iron Cross, which is a really hard gravel, sort of a mixed surface race. It's got single track, it's got dirt roads, it's got all kinds of crazy stuff. That I had won the first time 10 years prior at 40. So that was really great for me. And it just made me feel like, okay, like this stuff is still doable. And then along this journey, I met the women who work at Feisty Media, which is the company that hosts my podcast. And they had asked me to do a webinar based on what I was doing with Dr. Sims. And I was like, you guys need a podcast. And they said, do you want to do it? And I said, yes. And I'm kind of spontaneous sometimes. And I wanted to reach these women who I knew were out there, like myself, who couldn't find anything. Because like when you start digging in yourself to find what you can do during menopause, you find a lot of basic advice that I would write for something like Prevention Magazine, like you should walk, you should exercise. And I'd be like, check, I'm already exercising. You should like hydrate. I'm like, okay, I got it. But like, what about people who are already like interested in performance? And there was crickets, there was nothing. So I knew that there were so many women because I raced with them and they were starting to disappear. And, when I when I hit that place, I wanted to disappear too, because I was so confused and so like ashamed even. And I was like, we need to drag women back into, the daylight here. There's hope. Like, let's have these conversations. And here we are.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you decided to pursue and push through and say, you know what, we got to have a podcast or open up this can of worms, because seeing your teammates or the people you train with just fall off the radar, that's just so depressing. It's like a death. You don't, and that's what we want to disrupt. We can, and it's so wonderful that you did pursue and you did find that tribe. And that's what I'm trying to do here with the Hack My
Yeah.
Age tribe. I really want them to meet the Feisty Menopause tribe. I think these women are just like you, who didn't know that this whole world exists. I mean, some people in my personal group, people look at me as an anomaly, like, you're the weirdo who likes to train or exercise and eat well, and you're just, I don't know, you're a rare case. And I don't think so. I think there are
Right.
plenty of us.
There are plenty of us. Just have to find each other.
Yeah, you just need to find that tribe. And one thing that really bothered me one time was I when you're training and you're active, you have, I don't know, knee injury or your hip or something, and this happens, and we overcome them. And I remember one time when I was having trouble with my knee, a friend of mine said, "You know what, Zora, maybe it's time to slow down." And I was 48.
Like, I just, every time I hear that, I have the same visceral reaction. I'm like, I can't believe people still say that to people. I just can't even fathom it.
Yeah.
Like,
and she was the same age. And I thought, this is not acceptable. I said, you don't know me. But the problem was, the more I heard it, the more I started to think, maybe they're right. And are they right? And you question, you doubt. And that's when I think things can really go wrong. And in my gerontology studies, yes, the people that you're around, they certainly influence you. And so you want to be hanging around healthy, inspirational people, and not people who bring you down. And so this is what I saw in the Feisty Menopause Summit. It's just like you, and we go, oh wow, there is a whole world out there. And I highly encourage people to please follow Selene, follow Dr. Stacy Sims, the Feisty Menopause, if you are interested in this, because you're absolutely right. A lot of literature out there, a lot of information and tips for the sedentary person. But what about active people who are active and have always been, or even just want to start? Really, there's not a lot out there. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and you as well as the Feisty Menopause, and just that mission is to break those stereotypes of menopause and older women. And as a gerontologist, I mean, it's really crucial that I get this message out there, that there are all kinds of older adults. I don't want to poo-poo to people who are sedentary. I mean, if they want to be, that's fine, that's their right, no problem.
My mother, I don't know that she would run even from a fire. I think she'd just be like, somebody will get that.
She's probably like, where did you come from?
Every day, believe me, those words come out of her mouth. Where did this come from?
Where did this gene come from? Yeah. So funny, but it's true. I mean, we have this image of an older adult, or going through menopause, or just a stooped over, wire-haired granny who can't remember anyone's name, and this is just wrong. And we need to break these ageist stereotypes. And this is really important also just for the health of the population. I mean, there's a whole psychology behind this, but how do you think, ageist and menopause stereotypes need to be, or can be disrupted or debunked?
It's so interesting. Like, I think we're doing it. Like, I think that the fact that you and I are having these conversations right now, we are doing that. Like, a large part of it is your group, my group, stepping out, being seen, being heard, seeing like Jeannie Wall, who's in her 50s, like still climbing El Capitan, and like okay, and Erin Carson setting some of her best PRs at 54, in half Ironmans. Like, when you can see that, like, we all have power to show people what we're doing, right? Like, we all have it. Yeah, we all have the power. So, and I think that is happening, and I know it's happening because I see it. So that's really important. And I think that the intersection of these things is also really important, because one of the things I believe makes women reluctant to talk about menopause is the ageist piece, especially in athletic circles, but probably broadly as well. Because we have made these things synonymous. We have made menopause synonymous with being old, and we've made old bad. And all of that needs to change, right? Like all those dominoes need to fall. And so having these conversations is super important. Having representation is that it's so cliche at this point to say representation matters, but it really, really does. Like seeing people out there who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever beyond, who are just like, okay, that's what that can look like. Because if all you've ever been shown is what the things that you described, you're like, okay, well, that's I guess that's what aging is. And it's funny, a physiologist I really respect, Andrew, I can never say his last name, but he does science and sport. He put up he has these great graphic treatments that he puts up for like how to eat enough protein, or how you should train, and they're a little cartoon figures doing things. And he had one on masters women, and they looked like super granny, like literally,
Oh,
like almost, but they weren't even, they were like stooped over and white curly hair and like pushing a shopping cart around. And somebody tagged me, and I was like, oh, ask her. So we had just had the Feisty Performance Summit, and we had a whole thing about like not calling people out because it makes them defensive and dug in, but inviting them in to see things a different way. And I'm like, I'm going to invite Asker in, and I wrote a whole blog about it. I was like, I love you. You know that we go way back. Please understand how this lands. And he did get a little defensive at first. He's like, oh, we were just trying to be funny. And I was like, no, I'm not very, and when no one's laughing. And then I think he saw like that, okay, that is actually like important, that it
yeah,
does matter, the
yeah.
images that you put out there.
It does. There's a fine line, really between want to have a little laugh. I mean, we shouldn't get to the point where nobody can say anything. This is the one.
Totally. And
Yeah.
I'm not about that at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be clear.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
where it gets really hard because you don't want to offend people, and you don't want to be uncomfortable. And then we can't have a laugh. I mean, we should be able to laugh, but there is that fine line, like when is it too far? And that's what we all have to learn. But generally, I think, yeah, if we can just break those stereotypes, and just like any ism, ageism is something that people need just to be educated on, and they will get defensive if you kind of call them out. So
Right.
there's a
That's
whole,
the human nature. It's human nature. If someone starts
yeah.
calling you out, you're gonna be like, well, I mean, it's just better to be like, hey, let's have a conversation. Come over and see my point of view a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So what is the, because you are in the world of athletics and athletic women, and you're out there. So as well as just meeting all these people through your podcast, do you see a common thread in how athletic women, I mean, athletic, and we can define them as just anyone just doing exercise, planned exercise, going to the gym, all the way
Yep.
up to
If you exercise on purpose.
yeah, exercise on purpose. Like people always, when I introduce the Menopause for Athletes program to people, they're like, I'm not an athlete. I'm like, you are. So we have to define that it's anyone who does planned exercise, you're an athlete. But you see these people from just going to the gym all the way up to the professional level. So do you see any common thread of how these women are overcoming the challenges of menopause?
Yeah, I do actually. And it's funny having done almost 70, maybe, I don't know where we're at with the podcast, but a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
I am seeing some common threads that are really interesting to me. And the ones that I think stand out the most is like an acceptance and a curiosity and a willingness to change things up and try different things. So by acceptance, I don't mean, oh, well, this is it and sit down, like that's not what we're talking about. I mean, like, not just digging in your heels and being like, this is how I've done things for 20 or 30 years. And I'm just going to keep trying to do and hit my head against this wall and see if I can break through it. Like, that's not going to get you very far because you are in a transitionary period. Like, you're in a place of change, right? So what worked for those previous years may not work now. Like, so you're in this transition where you may need a different approach, and being curious about what that looks like and trying different approaches. And by and large, when you look at the audience, like that's what works for them. That's what, they stop and they're like, okay, like, what does my body need to do now to work with my changing physiology? Because we're all about that. And changing up the training and navigating some of the nutrition. And like, that is by and large the way it works. I mean, trying to just entrench yourself when you're in a changing physiology it's just an exercise in frustration.
Yeah, I like that word curiosity. And I was listening to your podcast this morning when you mentioned that. And you said, oh, I've heard it several times now. And it
It comes
definitely
up a lot.
It does. It does. And I think it's a great way to start. And it reminds me a little bit when I was working with, as a health coach, when you sort of put something so negative, this is going to be a horrible thing, or you take away their food, or you take away, it doesn't really work. So I would very often talk about people experimenting with themselves, right? Let's just call this one big experiment. Let's see what happens and how your body responds. You want to
puts you in a different headspace when you approach it that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that curiosity and that experimentation to me go hand in hand, and just consider, you're just one big science experiment, and you're the scientist trying to figure out how this all works. So stepping aside and looking and trying, and as a biohacker as well, that's what we're all about, is assessing, not guessing. Let's measure things. We love our gadgets and Oura rings and all that stuff, because sometimes you don't necessarily always feel it, but if you see a number, you may go, maybe. Yes. Sometimes I like it and what Laura tells me, and sometimes I really don't.
But it's like having those insights. I mean, I always tell people, like, it helps me stay on track and reinforces good is not the right word, but like beneficial behavior for myself, right? Like things that I know are going to work for my sleep or work for my stress. Like, it just helps me locate that and then stay on that path.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that motivation, and you have to take all this stuff, and we could go in a whole talk about gadgets and stuff, but like, you take all that stuff with a grain of salt. It's not a perfect science. So, but so we see that some of the best things to do for a woman going through this transition is to step back, take a look at it from a side of curiosity, and then make the adjustments. Is there any other advice that you would give a woman going through some stereotypical menopause systems who's struggling with her exercise routine? Because you are, a fitness expert as well. So if somebody's having, just more tired, or they see their muscle mass going down, what would you say is the one thing they should do to either, fix the exercise routine or jumpstart it?
Lift heavy, lift heavy, lift heavy, lift heavy. Did I say lift heavy?
Lift heavy shit. Heavy. You can say that.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure if I could. Yes. It's transformational. And I'm saying that from a place of, professional sort of knowledge of education, as well as very personal journey. I spent years, very muscular by nature, just like kind of not doing that piece. And even when I lifted, I never lifted heavy. I was never one of those people. I never went to the barbell room because I really thought that was for somebody else. I just thought, like, that's for those guys in the Zumba pants or whatever they're wearing. I can't remember what they're called. You know what I mean? The Gold's Gym, those guys, they're in there. I just didn't relate. And so when Stacy was just like, no, you've got to do this, I was like, okay. And then like light bulbs went off all over the place. It is, so when you reach this place, especially when your hormones, your sex hormones are declining, they have done a lot of work for you. Especially your estrogen is anabolic. It helps with strong muscle contractions. I mean, a lot of this work has been done by your hormones, so you might have been able to skate. But once you hit this transition where things are fluctuating and declining, you need to step in and do some of that work. And nothing works better than lifting heavy. It activates it's not about getting big. In fact, it's the opposite. Like a lot of the lifting that women tend to do when they do lift, the higher reps and stuff, that is actually breaking down your muscles, and it's, you know, giving you more of those show muscles. When you lift heavy, it activates your central nervous system, and it activates more motor units. So you have more muscles at your disposal. So you become more efficient and more energized. Like I did it this morning, and every time I lift heavy, I'm like, I am buzzing with electricity, right? I'm just like, I am ready to take on the world. Come at me. Come on, Zora, let's talk. You know, I'm just like so ready. And it makes, like, I feel like I have another gear in my bike. It helps with the body composition changes because it's so metabolically active. If there's nothing else that you try to do, I really encourage women to do that. Like, because they don't know unless you know. Like once you step in and start doing that, like, and by heavy, I mean like 5 reps, right? Like, you know, that's sort of my sweet spot anyway, but less, 6 would be the max of that. It is literally transformational.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I was just going to ask you, I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, what does it mean heavy? So you would say 5, 6 reps. So like the sixth, fifth or sixth one is like so hard you can barely lift it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always with good form. And it's really a good idea too. If you've not done it, I highly recommend. I mean, a coach is worth their weight in gold. Like hire somebody to show you, because it's only a few lifts that you really need to do, like a good deadlift or a good squat. It is amazing how great that is for everything you do. It complements endurance activity, because I'm mainly an endurance athlete, right? So when I went in to do CrossFit, they would want me to do a bunch of stuff that it's like, risk reward. I might hurt myself doing that. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But you know, like the lifting heavy part and working that component definitely translates to my goals as a human being and as a endurance athlete. So yeah, 100%.
I totally agree. We talked a lot about this in gerontology, just sarcopenia, age-related muscle mass loss. We need to keep our strength. And you hit it. You
So
explained
important.
it so well in terms of the hormones and why for women. I think it's crucial. And I was very much like you, just better at endurance. I'm not a professional athlete. I've never gotten to things like that, but I've always been gravitated towards those, you know, aerobics or step or, you know, those things where I could just go on forever. And then one day I joined this, I was in Hong Kong, living in Hong Kong, and there was a group called Bikini Fit. And it was started by a man, this guy, Alex, something, but it was only for women, which was amazing. I loved it. And he was brilliant, actually, the way he composed it. You had to do, you know, you kind of bought into a package and you had to do, you know, choose your time slot, show up every day at 7, whatever it was. And then one day was endurance, the next day was strength, and the next day was yoga. And, you know, the next day, and nobody would come to the yoga. These girls were like badass, total badass. They would lift like there was no tomorrow. And I was always, that was the class I wanted to skip because I was bad at it. I was like, I can't I can, you know, the peewee weights on, and it was hard. And so I didn't want to, but I knew it was good for me. And I was like you, I felt that buzz. I felt there's something to this. And by then I already knew that I should do it. So I did it, but absolutely. And then when I started to incorporate that into my health coaching, telling women just, you know, chill a little bit on the endurance. I know you love it, but get that strength training. And it's
very important.
Transformational. And so, but the thing is, a lot of few people get, it seems to me, is that 5, 6 reps. People still don't understand that. It's that they want to do the 10 or 15 because we've always been doing that since James.
Totally. And right? My God, that's the thing. I'm like, I know that I wrote that for 20 years and I'm sorry, you know, like it was what we thought. Like, I know better now. Science is evolutionary. No, we need to do, you know, like, yes, because we said that forever and ever. Tone. And that was our message, right?
Tone classes.
Yeah. So no, I mean, if you really want to tone, pick up some heavy weights, you know, like, because it really makes a huge difference. Yeah. And it doesn't just wear you down. And I think that's what, you know, when you get into those high reps, it actually just kind of breaks your muscles down and wears you down, which has it's benefits itself. If you let yourself recover, then your muscles recover. I mean, that's not saying that that doesn't work in a way, but when you do that heavy lifting that really activates the central nervous system and the motor units, it's a different thing. You're getting strong and powerful. I mean, even like the skinny Tour de France guys that you might see are lifting giant heavy weights for low reps. They're not in there doing 20, you know, they're not doing that.
They don't have time anyways.
Well, that's true. Nobody has time. We don't either.
That's what I love, 5, 6 reps. That's all you need.
Great. It's great. And once you do it, you understand like that is literally all you need because you feel it.
Yeah. The other thing I would really recommend people, like you said, get a trainer to help you if you've never done this before, if you don't know what proper form is, because you could really hurt yourself.
Yeah, definitely. You don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Right.
And anyone who's thinking about, oh, I don't want to get bulky, it would be really hard to do that.
It's not a thing.
Yeah, I would put that out the window. Just don't even think about that. So the other thing, actually, speaking of lifting heavy shit, because I discovered BFR bands, blood flow restriction bands.
Oh, that's interesting.
I thought this is a brilliant device for people either who are injured or if you're recovering from a surgery, or if you are an older adult who's never lifted weights and at all. I mean, I can't imagine telling my 85-year-old father-in-law to lift a very heavy thing, right? He's got to start quite low, but you got to get heavy at some point to get those gains. And I thought I did a great podcast with Chris Gaviglio, and he's a PhD in sports science, and he explained it brilliantly. And I really would love for more people to investigate this, at least look at, because there are contraindications, but you have these bands, you strap on either your arms or your legs, and then it partially restricts the blood flow, and it's supposed to increase growth hormone. So you can lift the baby weights, but you feel like you're lifting a truck. And when I've done this myself, I mean, I've measured on my heart rate monitor, my watch, and I just try them with the bands, without the bands. The moment I put the bands on, my heart rate's pumping. I mean, it's heavy. And what are your thoughts on BFR bands?
I wrote a whole feature on them for bicycling recently. I spent a lot of time. The research is very solid. Like when you actually go into the research, it's very solid. Climbers use them a lot. It's come up on my show with Nancy Fegan and Maggie Odette talked about them. They're both climbers. Like Nancy's a legendary climber, that they use them for the same reason. They can actually carry units with them. Yeah. And it does help with that kind of contraction, especially. But it is a very interesting way to, the capillaries, you develop more capillaries because your body has, like, it's trying to make the most of the blood you're letting it have, so that the adaptations are quite pronounced. The only thing, I have not personally tried it yet, I would like to. I have heard it is extraordinarily uncomfortable. Now, have you had that experience? The
first time you put them on, it's a bit weird. You have them on your arm and you pump them up. It looks like a little heart,
like a blood pressure
thing, right? And then you pump it up. And again, I highly recommend people to get one that has the pump, but get the training on how to do it. Because when I got this, I called Chris. I was like, I don't know what to do with it. What do I do? And there has to be a certain pressure first, and a certain size arm and certain size leg. It's not just a one size fits all. So once you do it, it felt definitely the arm felt like it was, you could feel the blood pulling. Like you could see the veins start to pop out. And you can see a difference in color, like you start to go a little bit more red. So you can't do this all day long. You do like 5 or 10 minutes, and then you take a break, and then you do another session. There's a way to do this. So, but if you do it and you do it right, I'm really impressed with how excellent it works. And when you Google this, it's a bunch of meatheads in the gym trying to bulk up. But I'm like, what about the physiotherapist?
The men's health guys love it. But it is like, it started in the physiotherapy, like so many of these things do, right? It started in rehab. Yeah. Because of what you're saying, like when you're injured, you can't put a lot of stress or weight on something. So that was a way that they would, and in some, like you can get, I won't say you can get gains, but you can stop the atrophy process, which is what they were doing. Like somebody would get injured and you lose so much muscle so quickly when you're immobilized, right? So they were using it on the immobilized limbs to make sure to stem the loss, and it worked. you know, and then like, if you add a little exercise on top of that, they're like, wow, these people are like not losing anything and maybe even gaining something. So it started there. And like I said, the science, it does, you can go on PubMed and the research is very, very good for it. It's very good. And it's interesting, like there are people who do it in lieu of lifting heavy things because you don't have to, like you were saying, you can lift a much, much lighter weight and get the same relative stress on your body because of, you know, you don't have the same blood flow. Now, I don't know if that equals the same central nervous system activation. Like I don't, you know, I haven't gone sort of down all the rabbit holes. So I don't know that. Like I would say intuitively not, but you know, I don't know. It is very interesting though. And to your point, for people like your dad, it's perfect.
Yeah. I mean, so I'd love more people to be talking about this for the aging population.
Yeah, totally. I think it's great for them.
And I love them because I'm a nomad. So I go from Airbnb to Airbnb and I don't have, sometimes there's a gym downstairs, sometimes there's not, but if I can just lift a couple of soup cans and have my BFR, I'm like, okay, let's, you know, I'm still rolling. So I'm loving them, but I was curious to hear your thoughts and I'll go have to get this article that you wrote about it because very, very curious about it. So your personal experience going through menopause, you know, you said you saw some changes and you did overcome it, right? What was the biggest contributing factor to that? And how did you do it?
Overcome is not a word I would use, honestly, because when I think overcome, I think negative. And my big push in this space is not to be negative with menopause. It's to be, you know, it sounds woo-woo to say like embrace this thing, but like I work with it. I'm all about like working with what my body needs and the changing physiology. So, I mean, as I have gone through this process over the past few years, I have actually embraced it as a transition to another level in life where I can step into my power and not be worried about what people think of me, which is incredibly liberating, you know? And yeah, it is a transition to really great things if you allow it to be. Now, that said, there are symptoms that may not make you feel that way, right? And that is what, when you ask the overcoming question, you're probably alluding to is, you know, how do you navigate or assuage these disruptive symptoms that are stopping you from stepping into your power the way you want to? And, you know, a lot of it, there's trial and error for every woman because every woman's journey through this transition is unique. I mean, that, you know, we just need to say that some women are really blindsided by depression and anxiety and vertigo. And, you know, some women have some hot flashes and not a whole lot else. I mean, it's a huge spectrum. But, you know, I personally, we talked about the lifting heavy. That was huge for me. That was really transformational. And I also started experimenting a bit with adaptogens and those kind of things. The big piece is for me personally, and for a lot of women, is as the sex hormones decline, it's harder to regulate your cortisol. Like you're naturally in this more stressed, sympathetic activated space. And that's hard, that's difficult because it does create those moods and the anxiety and all the stuff that is getting in your way. So mindfulness becomes really important, and finding ways to mitigate that stress become much more important. I personally have found success with ashwagandha and CBD. These are two things that just work for me. They help me sleep, and sleep is important because it sets up that loop, right? If you're not sleeping, you're always in that stress loop, and nothing good is happening from that space. So, you know, that's like, I think of it in terms of like pillars or dominoes, like what can you knock down that has a good knock-on effect on the rest of the stuff? Sleep is a huge one. Stress is a huge one, you know, so like, and lifting heavy also helps like tamp down that cortisol. So like that's, all that stuff is really good. So if you can just like bring down that stress, it does help you step into that power.
Yeah. And talk about even the, you know, when you talk about cortisol and stress response, a lot of this is accumulated since childhood that we may not even think about. You think, oh, I'm not stressed or I'm okay. But, you know, you've been in this space since you were 5, you know, and you don't even know it. So, you know, it's not that it's, you know, if we don't want to say stress is a bad thing, the same thing, you know, overcoming menopause, you know, it puts this negative light on it.
Right.
that you
some
need.
stress is great. You need some
Yes.
stress. Yeah. It's like,
We need
I liken it to a violin string. Like you want enough to make music in your life. Like not enough stress. There's like a limp string that doesn't make any music, right? Too
yeah.
much and it's like, doing, like it's all done. Like, but if you have just the right amount, the music is beautiful. That's how I view stress.
Absolutely. So, in terms of ashwagandha and CBD, is there, do people just go into any pharmacy and pick up
Well, it's hard.
something, or do you think that there's some that are better than others, or
It's
is it all
kind
the
of the Wild
same?
West, right? Like it is. I mean, this is a very unregulated industry, so there's a lot to wade through. We just actually had this discussion last night with Stacy Sims in our membership, and she recommends, finding pharmaceutical grade brands. Like you're not going to get it necessarily in your pharmaceutical, but there are brands like Life Extension is pretty good, where you can see that it's like organic ingredients and there's not a lot of filler and it's just like an established brand. Like just don't go on Amazon and buy the cheapest thing. That's not going to do you service. You
Yeah.
have to do a little research, and you can pretty much tell once you start digging in, like, okay, this brand has these papers and it's been around a long time and it has, I mean, you just like sort of use your spidey sense too.
Yeah.
And the same would be true with CBD. I mean, most of them have certificates of inspection. I can't remember the name of it, but like a third party has gone in and looked at their product to make sure that what they're saying is in the product is actually there. So, you can COA, a sort of certification of authenticity. So, you can look. It's just important to do your research and not just go to the gas station and buy something off the shelf.
Yeah, I think this is something, Dr. Stacy Sims was fantastic about explaining all of this in the Menopause for Athletes
Yeah.
program. I missed the live yesterday with the Feisty Menopause group. You
We talked
covered,
about adaptogens.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she's wonderful about helping you navigate that space. So I highly recommend to people to again go over to the Feisty Menopause space or Stacy Sims and get some advice. Also, I don't know if you know Sean Wells. He's an ingredientologist, and he's
Yeah.
got a lot of great tips on how to look out for what to look out for in a supplement, and
Yeah.
I can probably put that in the show notes too. I
That's
did
important.
he's brilliant. So I totally agree with you. Don't just go to the gas station and pick up the first bottle of
Or even the
ashwagandha.
grocery store. I mean, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It is overwhelming. You
Yeah.
go online, you're like, where do I even begin and how do I know? I totally get it. But
Yeah.
like once you find like reputable brands, that's good, because then
Yeah.
you can like wait, you know that you have like something that you can trust, and that's super important.
Yeah. So what about you are such the advocate for menopause and disrupting this space, and what is the one thing that frustrates you the most about the topic of menopause?
you know, this is going to sound really silly, but the word menopause, I hate the word.
Yeah.
I hate the word. I don't know anyone who likes the word. Like whenever I talk to people, like I just really hate the word. I'm like, I know it's a bummer of a word. Like when I was trying to come up with the title for the podcast, that was my biggest barrier. I'm like, I hate this word. And, it's just as a word person, it's just a drag to say. It doesn't sound positive. It doesn't sound energetic. So I'm just going to start calling it like the next level of womanhood or something. I don't know.
Next level. Yeah.
Next level. Yeah. Cause that is the thing that like, still, I'm just like, wow, I really hate this word.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just unfortunate, we have such a negative connotation to it, but it was born that way. Anyway,
It was born that way.
that poor word. So let's talk about your guests on your podcast. I love it. Keep doing what you're doing, and I highly recommend again people to go and listen to that. You talk about sports a lot because that's really your realm, athletics and sports, but so much about menopause and hormones, emotional and mental health.
A lot of that comes
Yeah,
up. Mental and emotional health comes up an awful lot.
a lot. And then that's another, box that we need to open and talk more about. Sex and nutrition, all of this is just amazing. Any topic that an athletic woman wants to hear, you're going to get it on the podcast. And I find them all like super inspiring. But which guest inspired you most?
That's such a hard question. I mean, I literally, As a writer, my goal has been, since I started writing, to learn something from everything that I write. Because if I learn something, I'm sure that you're going to learn something. And that has been my goal with this podcast as well. Like, I want to walk away with something new, because then I think my audience will walk away with something new, especially since I spend so much time in this space. So if I'm getting something out of it, hopefully you are too. So it's really hard to pin down a single guest, because I honestly feel I have gotten something so valuable from each and every one of them. I think, it's easy to point to the ones that are obviously inspirational. Like, you've got a Leah Goldstein, right? Who just like beat all, like, one race across America outright, men, women, everything. Like,
Her story is amazing.
It's hard to even comprehend what she does. And that is very inspirational. And in that podcast, she herself said that menopause has been kind of a non-starter for her. It's been like, not like she doesn't have a whole lot of symptomology, right? So that doesn't take away from anything she just did, because she actually sits on a trainer for 15 hours staring at nothing but a wall and no music. So she's just like, it's a whole other thing, right? But the people who I have been most moved and inspired by myself, who I like have stuck harder in that way, are the ones like, Adina O'Neill comes to mind. She is an everyday athlete. She is often a back of the pack athlete. And she has really been struggling with depression and hormone swings, and her weight, and she's trying different things. She is curious. So she's trying hormone therapy. She's doing a lot of trial and error. Most of it right now is error for her. And she just put up a post yesterday. I was like, I love this so much. Like, she, instead of just going, okay, like, this obviously is nothing is working, I'm done, I'm out. She has been like, okay, body, this is who we are at this moment. This is what's going on. What can we do now to work with where we are now? And she's taken up cold water swimming. Like, she's a bigger athlete. And she's doing these amazing swimming races and these amazing swimming feats, and she looks joyful, and she's putting herself out there. And I was like, yes, like this is amazing, right? Like that, like I leave that just thinking, hell yeah. Like, if she can get herself in that headspace and show up and just find something that works for her and be successful and be joyous, like, we all can.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's embodying that curiosity and that experimentation, never giving up. That's wonderful. Thank you. I love that. And what about a guest who kind of surprised you, that maybe turned your own ideas upside down, if any?
Yeah, I haven't really had that. And I think it's because I do spend so much time researching in this. So like, I haven't had anything like, I think the thyroid episode was the one that I learned the most personally from, because I had never really thought about thyroid. I was like, wow, okay, that's, and then I started like looking around. I'm like, I bet my friend who's been talking about this has a thyroid thing, like all of a sudden, like, things like we're connecting. But the one that made me really want to burn everything down, it was an early episode with Eleanor Cleghorn called Unwell Women. And if you need to be fired up and want to pick up a torch and burn the world down, I highly recommend that episode. Because she wrote this whole book, which is amazing, on the history of women in medicine. And oh my God, I mean, there's a whole chapter on menopause, but like, just how about our wandering wombs and our hysteria, and and a lot of this stuff is not that long ago, and experimenting on Black women without anesthesia because they don't feel pain because they're less human. I couldn't break enough things. I was so angry. So it's really important to know that. It's important to know how medicine has viewed us, because we are still in this space. We're still in this space. And one of the things that, when you talk about frustrating, I said the word, but one of the most frustrating things, honestly, is that there are so many women, because only 7% of residents in a really recent survey said they felt prepared to talk about menopause. And that was included OBGYN. That included that, right? It's incredible. It's crazy. They don't learn about menopause, so they're not prepared. So we have women who are getting these symptoms that they don't know are menopause, and their doctors don't know. So they'll have like all over joint pain. They'll have vertigo. They'll have depression, all these symptoms that are not seemingly related. So they're going to all these different doctors, and every doctor is saying you're fine. So they're just like, okay, I guess this is me now, and I'm losing my mind, instead of like somebody who can go like, oh, your hormones are fluctuating at this time and this can cause all those symptoms, and maybe let's try some hormone therapy for you, and which is really great for a lot of those things. But you're still, to this day, I'm talking to so many women who go from doctor to doctor to doctor to all these symptoms, and not including their OB-GYN, and they're just like, and it's that is the most maddening thing.
It is. It's
And
horrifying.
it comes from that space of that, how we were treated historically. Like, it's still happening, like we're starting to crack that, but it's going to take some time.
You know what I heard yesterday, even there's a big scandal in France right now with nursing homes, and they're very expensive nursing homes, and they're mistreating the residents. And so there was an interview with the daughter of one of the women who was in there, and she said that she wasn't getting the care, or they were giving her some, or not giving her some treatment, because they said old people don't feel pain.
Oh my God.
I was shocked. I mean, it was just yesterday, honestly. It's
where does that
come
from?
This is horrifying. Yeah.
It's horrifying, like outright horrifying.
Yeah. It's really sad. So we do need to change these things. Old people do feel pain.
Yeah, they do. We all do. We all do. Everything on this planet, fish, us, whatever. I mean, we all feel pain. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So no, we do need to change these things, but let's talk a little bit about because you do have all of these episodes that you've been, not all of them, but some of the episodes you've mentioned, actually, you have some show notes, like a pretty awesome notes that I found in the Feisty Menopause space. Let's talk a little bit about these programs, these groups that we're all part of, and some of us are, some of us aren't, where, because they're different. There's a Facebook group, then there's the Feisty Menopause group, which is a subscription model, and then there's these summits that come around. Why don't you break some of them down for us so we know which group offers what at what level?
Totally. So I mean, we have the Hit Play Not Pause Facebook group, and that is just a closed private group, but you just knock on the door, tell us about yourself, and we let you in. We just keep out trolls and stuff. It's totally free. It is a very engaging space. I highly recommend that as an entry point. And you can find us at, also free, Feisty Menopause on Instagram and Facebook. And I create blogs as well. So I write a weekly newsletter, which also covers a lot of the science. I look for new studies coming out. Sometimes they're things, rants about cultural things. But it's, again, that's a free resource. And we have our Feisty Menopause membership, which is now the next level membership. And that is a deeper dive into all these things. And we also do twice a month Ask Me Anythings with Dr. Stacey Sims and myself.
Yeah, and that's on Facebook. So, right, Zoom. It's a Zoom call, or is
that's a Zoom? Yeah, we do that Zoom kind of like this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I keep missing them because it's not my time zone. But I watch the replays.
We can't.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So that's so great. I just started with that, and I found a lot of these resources here as well. And I just think it's amazing what you're doing and how you're putting it all together, so we can easily find this information. The podcast summaries are fantastic too. If you don't have time to listen to them for an hour, you can just get the cliff notes.
Yeah, the membership gets that too. I put together, because people were telling me literally they were listening to some of them 3 times, because some of them are very dense. Like I had the Estrogen Matters people on, that's a lot of information to try to, so I put together these podcast guides, and you get those as part of the membership as well.
Yeah,
as well
I love
as a lot
that
of
episode.
Sheets. Yeah.
And that was because you need to write notes to some of these podcasts.
Yeah, that's why I just did it. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And then people are super grateful for that.
Yeah, no, I know some people do, but if you're, jogging or something, you can't take those notes, and you go, shoot, I need that. So I love that. So there's so many great ways to find what you're writing about, your blog. And what about I'm trying to think. Let me see what this is. So before because I want to open up the panel for everybody to ask Q&A, but I want to get my own questions in here first. So What can women do who are listening now to support your mission?
Hmm. Honestly, the simple thing, I mean, certainly if you want to join our membership, we'd love to have you, right? That's the next level membership at Feisty Menopause. But the biggest thing for spreading all of this is, listen to the show and share it. Like sharing the show, subscribing and sharing has gone a huge way. It makes so many things possible because we have all these sponsors and people pay attention, and the show just won an award. And like, there's a lot of, it goes a long way. Like when you have everyone telling you, please share, please subscribe and share, there's a reason for that, because it helps and it really works. So that's the biggest thing, frankly.
Yeah, it has an impact, and that's what it
Yeah.
is. You're spreading the word, and actually just by sending it to somebody, sharing, you are having that conversation about
Yeah.
menopause, or or getting older. I think it's something, I believe it or not, I had a conversation with someone who was about 62 in Ireland, and she was so happy to talk about menopause with me that she said, in my group with my friends, they go, whenever I try to talk menopause, they go, shh, 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 we don't talk about we don't talk about that. And I was like, what, are you living in the like Middle Ages? Like, are you kidding me? Your friends tell you shouldn't talk about that?
That's crazy. It's crazy. It's funny. My mom, we have Sunday dinner, once a month, and they were over this past Sunday, and she is now like just gushing about her own experience because they never talked about it either. She never had anyone to talk about it to.
Oh,
And so now I'm hearing like all about like this experience that she never talked about when I was growing up or with her friends. And like, this is so fascinating. Yeah.
yeah.
No, we got to talk.
Yes,
That's how we help each other.
exactly. That's our strength as women.
Totally.
So, okay, I would love to, anyone here has questions, you can either undo your mic or you can type in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts or anything you'd like to say. It'd be wonderful to have a couple of words if somebody'd like to undo their mic or type, or if you're looking for your mic. Oh, I know you guys are being polite and waiting for the others to to go first. It'd be interesting to know if any of you already follow Selene Yeager or part of the Feisty Menopause group. Yeah,
I see nods, but I hear
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Hello.
There's Jen. Yeah, thumbs up. Awesome.
I'll talk.
Okay.
Yay.
I don't have any questions. I saw you last night, Celine, so it
I
was
saw you
amazing.
too.
Yeah, I've joined the groups. I've done Stacey Sims' course. I'm trying to soak up as much as I can to coach it, as well as my own, body as approaching it. So, I have questions daily. I have nothing right now. I just wanted to say
That's
and
fine.
thank you.
I understand we all have questions daily. But
Yeah, I know, right?
yeah, hopefully we
Yeah.
can answer them.
What was the biggest takeaway, Jen, from yesterday's talk about adaptogens?
I thought it was super curious about the consistency of them.
The
Like
consistency? What do you mean?
The consistency
yeah,
of using them, you mean?
yeah, correct. Like if you do take them, don't take it. Don't like take one and then 5 days later take another. Like, don't experiment that way, but dive in for 3 weeks every day. She recommended in the morning if you're confused about, having to stay up late because the suppressant versus, suppressing the body or revving it up. So I thought that was interesting because I think some people do. It seems to be like a hot product in, like a fancy product now that you can find.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to find what you want, how many like there's now almost too much information, right? So it's difficult to maneuver because you don't hear the right things. You just hear the marketing and the promos behind it now. So
yeah, and people take them like
about.
they would an Advil, right? And they're like, oh, but I still have my headache. And it doesn't work that way. They do need to sort of build up a little bit over time. It's like it's a much more subtle dimmer switch of cortisol and working with that physiology. And that's just not like something that happens in an hour. You
Yeah.
like a 3-week a 3-week trial is really a good way to see if they're helping, or, and we're not test tubes. So it can be some trial and error. Some people will try some, be like, I didn't really feel it. And some people, I know one woman who's like, you will never take my ashwagandha away. Like, she's just like, I sleep, I'm calm. Yeah. And other people are just like, and they try something else. They're like, oh, that's a me, so it does take, it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chiming in, Jen. And
Yeah,
I'm
you're
glad.
welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's good to hear, positive reinforcement of the group, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people out there, and you're one of them. So I hope to see you at on the Facebook page and around. So thank you.
Yeah,
so much.
for sure. It's nice that it's more of a conversation versus just, I think a couple years ago it was just kind of soaking up the information, which is also good. But you go to all these webinars and you can only kind of do that much, where I want to sit in a round table and really dive in and continue to get the information. So yeah, thank you both.
Awesome. That's next level. Thank you, Jen. Mandy or Julia, have got any last minute words before we close out?
I'll just say a last minute word. I'm just super grateful for people like Selene and Dr. Stacy that are, getting this word out there, because I have to tell you, in my late 30s, my hormones completely crashed out and I went into kind of an early menopause. I'm not fully in menopause, but I went amenorrheic and all that stuff. And all they kept telling me was, you have to quit running. It's this marathon training that got you to this point. And I did. I quit for 6 years. It didn't not at all. And I was so happy when I ran my first half marathon back from that in 2018. And now I'm just like, I'm working with Aaron Carson out here in Colorado.
Oh, that's awesome. Yay. Yay. I love to hear that.
Awesome. And I'm just like, I'm going to win my age group again, because, I need to be there. And, yeah. So I'm super grateful, Selene, that you're, getting this message out here, and I'm helping get your message out there, because, I don't want women to not be able to do the things they love.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mindy's managing the Menopause for Athletes alumni group, right? And so that's another great space. There's so many wonderful people, and so these are people who've gone through the Menopause for Athletes program with Stacey Sims, and we have a lot to chat about and lots of things to compare with. So thank you so much, Dr. Marziaz, for coming and joining us for that. So, Julia, I'm going to ask if you have any questions, say them now or forever hold your peace. All right. One last question from me. Selene, do you have any last words or message you'd like to share with our group?
It's the one that I always say, and it's live forward. If anyone asks me what my philosophy on all of this is, it's that. I think that it's very easy to get to a certain place, and 50 for a lot of people is that place. Menopause can be that place where all of a sudden you're like looking back over your shoulder at everything that you did and were, and that life, and thinking like just living in this space where you're looking backward at, and not setting new goals for yourself, and not trying new things, and not looking at all the great things that are ahead of you. And if there's one thing I think that is useful, is like live forward. Your life is still, you have this glorious life ahead of you still.
I love that. I thought you were going to say live feisty.
Well, that too. Yes. Stay feisty, live forward.
With a little bit of feistiness in you. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. If anybody wants to reach out to you, the best place I think is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you are Fit Chick or Fit Chick 3, right? Depending on which platform. I'll have all of them in the show notes. And your website, seleneyeager.contently.com. Is that the best place to find you there?
It's the best place to find my body of work, but like you can find you find me at Selene Yeager Fit Chick, everything on Facebook. I put everything up there, and on Instagram. So, unless you really want to go a deep dive in everything I've ever written, you don't need to go there.
Yeah, you've got some
Yeah.
wonderful articles, though. I really encourage people to sign up for the newsletter as well. I love that. Look forward to that. You take up some great topics, and you're so good at writing. You make it so
Thank you.
pleasant to read.
I appreciate that.
And of course, livefeisty.com. You will go to that website and you will find the Hit Play Not Pause podcast, or Apple Podcast, Spotify, all the wonderful places where you find podcasts. Join me there and learn more about how to live forward and how to live feisty. So thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you so much, Selene, for your time. And I hope we can have you come back.
I would love that. Thank you so much, and keep on doing what you're doing too.